What if I told you that the answer to one of the most embarrassing, most misunderstood, and most silently suffered health problems in men today has been sitting in your kitchen this entire time? Not in a pill bottle, not in an expensive clinic, not in some experimental treatment your doctor read about last month. Right there in your kitchen, in ordinary foods that billions of people eat every single day without ever knowing what those foods are doing to their blood vessels, their hormones, their circulation, and yes, their ability to perform. Here is a number that should stop you cold. According to research published in the Journal of Sexual Medicine, over 320 million men worldwide are expected to be affected by erectile dysfunction by the year 2025. That is not a small number. That is nearly the entire population of the United States. And the most heartbreaking part of that statistic is not the number itself. It is the fact that the vast majority of those men will never talk about it with their doctor. They will feel ashamed. They will feel like something is fundamentally broken in them. And they will never discover that for many of them, the root cause is something shockingly fixable through the food they eat every single day. One of my patients, I will call him Marcus, came to see me about 2 years ago. He was 52 years old, a successful businessman, looked healthy on the outside, but he sat across from my desk with a weight on him that had nothing to do with his body mass index. He told me something had not been right for almost 3 years. He had tried not thinking about it. He had told himself it was just stress, but he knew something was wrong. He had no idea that his blood vessels were essentially suffocating from the inside out, and that a set of specific foods could start reversing that damage within weeks. Within 6 months of changing what he ate, Marcus called my office just to tell me his wife had asked him if he was secretly taking medication. He was not. He was just eating differently. Stay with me for the next 20 minutes, because what you are about to hear might genuinely change your life. My name is Dr. James Holloway, and I have spent the better part of 2 decades working at the intersection of cardiovascular medicine, metabolic health, and men's wellness. I have treated thousands of patients across a career that has taken me from university hospitals to private practice, and one theme keeps showing up in my work with stunning consistency. The foods a man eats determine far more about his sexual health, his body composition, and his cardiovascular vitality than almost any other single factor in his life. In this video, I am going to walk you through the science of why certain foods can restore erectile function, reduce dangerous visceral fat, and improve blood flow in ways that most men never experience because nobody ever gave them this information in plain language. I am going to tell you about the specific categories of food I personally recommend to my patients, the mechanisms behind why they work at a cellular level, and the real stories of men whose lives changed simply by changing what was on their plates. I am also going to share something near the end of this video that the pharmaceutical industry would genuinely prefer you never found out. So please do not skip ahead. Every part of this builds on the last. By the end of this video, you will understand your own body in a way you probably never have before, and you will have a completely new relationship with the food you eat every single day. Let us start at the very beginning, because if you want to understand how food affects erectile function, fat accumulation, and blood flow, you have to understand one molecule. That molecule is called nitric oxide, and it is quite possibly the most important biological compound you have never heard of. Nitric oxide is a gas produced inside the cells that line your blood vessels. Its job is to tell those blood vessels to relax, to widen, and to allow blood to flow freely. When nitric oxide production is healthy, blood moves easily everywhere it needs to go. When nitric oxide production is impaired, blood vessels tighten, circulation suffers, and every organ that depends on healthy blood flow starts to struggle. That includes your heart. That includes your brain. And that includes the tissue responsible for erectile function. Here is why this matters so profoundly. An erection is, at its most fundamental level, a cardiovascular event. It requires a significant and sudden increase in blood flow to a very specific area of the body. If your blood vessels are stiff, inflamed, or unable to produce adequate nitric oxide, that event simply cannot happen the way it should. This is why erectile dysfunction is now recognized by cardiologists as an early warning sign of cardiovascular disease. When a man develops erectile problems, his blood vessels are often already showing the early signs of the same disease process that eventually leads to heart attacks and strokes. The body is sending a signal. Most men ignore it or feel ashamed by it. What they should be doing is treating it as urgent cardiovascular information. Now here is where the food story gets genuinely fascinating. The precursors to nitric oxide, the raw materials your body uses to manufacture it, come almost entirely from the food you eat. Specifically, they come from compounds called nitrates and amino acids like L-arginine and L-citrulline. When you consistently eat foods rich in these compounds, your body has everything it needs to produce nitric oxide in abundance. When you eat a diet dominated by processed foods, refined sugars, and inflammatory fats, you essentially starve your blood vessels of their raw materials. You create the very conditions that lead to the problems I described. Let me tell you about a category of food that I recommend to essentially every male patient I see who is dealing with circulation or performance concerns. Dark leafy greens. Spinach, arugula, kale, Swiss chard, and especially beetroot and beetroot greens are among the highest dietary sources of natural nitrates on the planet. When you eat these foods, the bacteria in your mouth and gut convert those nitrates into nitric oxide with remarkable efficiency. A landmark study from the University of Exeter showed that people who consumed a nitrate-rich beetroot juice supplement experienced significant improvements in blood flow and exercise endurance within just a few days of starting. Now imagine experiencing those same effects not just for a few days, but consistently, because you have made these foods a regular part of your life. I had a patient named Robert who was 47, slightly overweight, and had been experiencing what he described as inconsistent performance for about 18 months. He was not ready to take medication. He asked me if there was anything else he could try. I put him on what I call a nitric oxide support protocol. Heavy emphasis on dark leafy greens, beets, and specific other foods I will mention shortly. 6 weeks later, he came back for a follow-up. He told me the difference was, and I am using his exact words here, like going from a garden hose with a kink in it to a fire hydrant. His words, not mine. Now let us talk about another category of food that has profound effects on both erectile function and body fat, and that is foods rich in zinc and selenium. These two minerals are absolutely critical for testosterone production. Testosterone is the primary androgenic hormone in man, and its relationship to both sexual function and fat distribution is well established. Men with low testosterone tend to accumulate more fat, particularly around the abdomen. That abdominal fat, the deep visceral fat that surrounds the organs, is not just a cosmetic issue. It actively converts testosterone into estrogen through a process involving an enzyme called aromatase. This creates a vicious cycle where low testosterone leads to more fat, and more fat leads to even lower testosterone. Oysters have been the subject of jokes about romance for centuries, but behind the joke is serious biochemistry. Oysters contain more zinc per serving than virtually any other food on Earth. Zinc is a cofactor in testosterone synthesis. Men who are deficient in zinc almost universally show depressed testosterone levels. Correcting that deficiency through diet can restore testosterone to healthy ranges in a matter of weeks. Pumpkin seeds, beef, lentils, and hemp seeds are also excellent sources. Brazil nuts are the single richest dietary source of selenium, and selenium works synergistically with zinc to support testicular function and sperm health. 2 or 3 Brazil nuts per day can bring your selenium levels from deficient to optimal. That is a remarkably simple intervention with a significant hormonal payoff. I want to spend some time now talking about a topic that most people do not connect to sexual health or blood flow, and that is chronic inflammation. Inflammation is the background noise of modern disease. It is not the kind of inflammation you feel when you sprain your ankle. It is a low-grade, persistent, systemic fire burning inside your blood vessels, your fat tissue, and your organs. It is driven primarily by diet, specifically by the overconsumption of refined carbohydrates, seed oils high in omega-6 fatty acids, processed meats, and added sugars. Chronic inflammation damages the endothelial cells, the cells lining your blood vessels that produce nitric oxide. When those cells are inflamed, they cannot produce nitric oxide efficiently. Blood vessels stiffen, circulation suffers, and the downstream consequences include exactly the problems we have been discussing. The antidote to chronic inflammation is a diet rich in polyphenol and omega-3 fatty acids. Polyphenol are plant compounds found in deeply colored fruits and vegetables, in dark chocolate, in green tea, in extra virgin olive oil, and in berries of all kinds. Blueberries, pomegranates, and dark cherries are particularly potent sources of polyphenol that specifically support vascular health. A study published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition found that men who regularly consumed pomegranate juice showed measurable improvements in erectile function scores after just 4 weeks. The researchers attributed this to improved endothelial function and increased nitric oxide bioavailability. Omega-3 fatty acids from fatty fish like wild salmon, sardines, and mackerel directly reduce the inflammatory signaling molecules in your bloodstream. They make your blood less viscous, meaning it flows more easily. They reduce triglycerides, which are one of the primary drivers of arterial plaque formation. And there is emerging research suggesting that omega-3 fatty acids may directly support nitric oxide production by protecting the endothelial cells that manufacture it. This is not supplemental nutrition advice dressed up in scientific language. This is genuinely important medicine in food form. Now I want to take a moment to talk about something that connects all of these threads together, and that is the health of your gut microbiome. The trillion microorganisms living in your digestive tract are not just responsible for digestion. They play a central role in hormone metabolism, in the conversion of dietary nitrates to nitric oxide, in the regulation of systemic inflammation, and in the production of compounds that directly influence cardiovascular health. A diverse, healthy gut microbiome produces short-chain fatty acids that reduce inflammation throughout the body. It converts certain polyphenol into their most bioactive forms. And it is the primary site where the nitrates in your leafy greens get converted into nitric oxide. Fermented foods like natural yogurt, kefir, sauerkraut, kimchi, and miso are some of the most powerful tools available for supporting gut microbiome diversity. And here is a connection that most people never make. A 2019 study from Harvard found a strong correlation between gut microbiome diversity and testosterone levels in men. The gut actually plays a role in recycling and metabolizing estrogen. A healthy microbiome keeps estrogen metabolism running efficiently, which indirectly supports testosterone levels. An unhealthy microbiome can lead to elevated circulating estrogen, which, as we discussed, suppresses testosterone and promotes fat storage. Eating for your gut is, in a very real sense, eating for your hormones. Let me now give you the clearest, most actionable guidance I can offer based on everything we have discussed. The first thing I want you to do is build what I call a nitric oxide foundation into your daily eating. This means eating at least 1 large serving of dark leafy greens every single day. Spinach in a smoothie, arugula on a salad, sautéed kale with dinner, it does not matter. What matters is the consistency. Add beetroot in some form at least 3 or 4 times per week. Roasted beets, raw grated beets in a salad, even a small glass of pure beetroot juice. Give this a consistent 8 to 12 weeks before you judge the results, because the improvements in vascular function build gradually and then become quite dramatic. The second thing is to aggressively increase your intake of polyphenol-rich foods. Start your day with a handful of blueberries or mixed berries. Add pomegranate arils to your yogurt. Switch to extra virgin olive oil as your primary cooking and dressing fat. Drink 2 or 3 cups of green tea daily because the catechins in green tea are among the best-studied polyphenol for endothelial function. Have a small square of dark chocolate that is at least 70% cacao with your afternoon coffee. These are not sacrifices. These are upgrades to foods that most people actually enjoy. The third area I want you to focus on is your protein sources. Prioritize fatty fish 2 to 3 times per week. If you can access wild-caught salmon or sardines, those are ideal. Make sure you are getting adequate zinc through foods like pumpkin seeds, which are wonderful roasted and salted as a snack, oysters when available, grass-fed beef, and legumes. Add 2 to 3 Brazil nuts daily for selenium. These small, consistent additions to your diet are supporting your testosterone production every single day. The fourth recommendation is to eliminate the inflammatory disruptors. I know this is the part people like to skip, but it is genuinely important. Refined vegetable oils, the kind used in most packaged and fried foods, are loaded with omega-6 fatty acids that drive inflammation. Processed meats contain compounds that directly damage endothelial cells. Added sugars, especially fructose from soft drinks and sweetened foods, drive insulin resistance, which in turn suppresses testosterone and promotes visceral fat accumulation. You do not have to be perfect. But reducing these foods consistently will amplify every single positive benefit of the foods I have recommended. Finally, incorporate a daily habit of eating something fermented. A small cup of natural yogurt in the morning, a spoonful of sauerkraut with lunch, or a cup of kefir in the evening. These tiny, consistent doses of beneficial bacteria will gradually transform your gut microbiome, and through that transformation, they will support your hormones, your circulation, and your energy in ways that compound beautifully over months and years. Here is the thing I promised to share that the pharmaceutical industry would rather you did not know too clearly. There is a compound found in watermelon and in smaller amounts in cucumbers and bitter melon called L-citrulline. When you eat foods containing L-citrulline, your body converts it into L-arginine, which is the direct precursor to nitric oxide. The conversion is actually more efficient through this dietary route than through eating L-arginine directly. A clinical trial published in the journal Urology found that men with mild erectile dysfunction who took L-citrulline supplementation experienced significant improvements in their erection hardness scores and reported doubled frequency of satisfying intercourse. The effect was specifically attributed to enhanced nitric oxide production. Here is the part the pharmaceutical industry dislikes. The mechanism by which L-citrulline improves erectile function is remarkably similar to the mechanism of action of PDE5 inhibitor drugs, the class of medication most commonly prescribed for erectile dysfunction. Both work by increasing nitric oxide availability and improving blood vessel relaxation. The difference is that the dietary and natural supplement approach has essentially no side effects, costs almost nothing, and improves your cardiovascular health broadly rather than targeting one isolated function for a few hours. Watermelon in summer. Cucumbers in your daily salad. Bitter melon if you are adventurous enough to try it. These are not exotic superfoods. They are ordinary, inexpensive foods that contain a compound your blood vessels desperately want. Start eating them with intention and see what happens. Let me bring everything we have covered today back to one central truth. Your blood vessels are not fixed. Your hormonal balance is not fixed. Your body composition is not fixed. These are dynamic, living, responsive systems that react to what you put into them every single day. The man who feels like his best years are behind him, whose circulation feels sluggish, whose energy has faded, who is quietly carrying a shame he has never spoken out loud. That man has more power to change his situation than he probably realizes. Marcus, the patient I told you about at the beginning of this video, came back to see me last year for his annual checkup. His testosterone was back in the healthy range. His visceral fat had decreased substantially. His blood pressure was the best it had been since his 30s. And he told me something I will never forget. He said the most powerful thing about changing what he ate was not any single result. It was the feeling of being in his own body again, of feeling like himself again, that is available to you, not through a pill, not through a procedure, but through a sustained and intentional relationship with the extraordinary medicine that is food. Start with the greens. Add the berries. Prioritize the fish. Protect your gut. Eat the watermelon. And give your body the consistent daily signal that you are taking care of it. The response, over weeks and months, will be more significant than you can currently imagine. If this video gave you something genuinely useful today, if you learned something that shifted the way you think about your health, I would ask you to hit that like button right now. It takes 1 second, and it helps more men who need this information actually find it. If you are not subscribed to this channel yet, please subscribe and turn on notifications because we cover topics like this regularly with the same level of depth and honesty that you just experienced. And I would love to know in the comments below what health topic you would like me to cover next. Your comments genuinely shape what I make, and I read them more than you might think. The most important thing you will do for your health is not the next great intervention you discover. It is the ordinary things you do every single day. Feed your body well today, and then do it again tomorrow.